Major alternative media exercise.
Okay, audio is live.
I'm going live now. Okay, hold on.
Unfortunately, I didn't have time to prepare the countdown, but we will be on in just a moment here.
Okay, will we pick up the sound adequately on mine, I think? I hope.
So, yes.
Watch your foot, David.
Here we go.
Yep, we're just about ready, Doctor, whenever you're ready.
1 second.
Oh, now we got microphone envy.
Oh boy, I got all kinds of issues here.
Well,
Are we all set?
we're ready, Doctor. Ready when you are.
Okay, I'm hoping, let's make sure we got good sound quality.
We are live, sir.
Great, I'm here. Let's make sure from everybody out there that sound quality is good. Let's see what people say in the live stream.
Whoops.
Good, we're all set?
We are all set. We're live here.
Good, and let's make sure it looks good. Okay, let's see on everybody. Good, fine. Let's some feedback here in the live stream that it looks good.
Great.
I think we're all ready. We're here. This is in my study with Charles Ortel and Jason Goodman. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us today.
Thanty for having us,
It's
Doctor.
great to be here.
Good to see you.
And I think we're going to have a good discussion. I think got some breaking news as we get started, and I want to just make sure we're doing fine. Let's see, we're getting people all over from Serbia,
Wow.
Colorado, UK. Let's make sure that please someone give us a double check to make sure the sound is good and the picture quality is good. We're just about ready to get started, and we've got a couple hundred people joining on my site,
Great.
as well as on your live streaming.
Right, we're doing a multicast here, Doctor, today.
Right.
We're live on both Crowdsource The Truth. Well, of course, we're on 21st Century 3D's live streaming channel. We've been plagued, Doctor, by malicious strikes on the YouTube channel, so I've been hopping around. But today, we've got a stream going out on your YouTube channel. So
Right.
please tell everyone where they can find that.
Well, mine is on my channel is JRL, my initials, JRLCORSI, JRL Corsi, and you can just find me directly by going to that site, and it'll be live streaming there on my channel. I've got my camera going here. We've got your cameras going for your channel, so we're double live streaming the broadcast. And I think we're getting good reception. We're getting people from around the country and around the world. Say sound is too low on mine. I'm not sure. My sound should be coming through here. I'll put my headphones on for a minute and double check this.
It's always a trick getting these.
It's a trick getting it all done exactly right.
Yes.
But hold on.
I don't know if people fully appreciate the difficulty in doing that, but Charles, you know, there's a tremendous amount of really earth-shattering things happening in terms of the leak of the Inspector General's report. As we
Okay, here we go. I think this is, my sound now should be a little bit better. I think that's good. We can hear my sound here as well. I won't need to keep the earphones on, but it gives me a double check that my sound is good. There we are, we're fine.
Now, Dr. Corsi, just as we arrived here at your house, True Pundit is reporting that the Inspector General's report is finally out, possibly not in the way it was intended to be. It's been leaked. What do you think we're going to see from this IG report? What are the consequences for James Comey, Andrew McCabe, the people at the top of the FBI, and the rest of the Department of Justice?
Well, I mean, first of all, on my live stream last night, I was predicting that this would be leaked because we started to get reports yesterday during the day that the Democrats and others who want to protect the deep state and President Obama were trying to change, redact, rewrite Inspector General Horowitz's report. And this is the second report. Remember, we have the report on McCabe, this is the report on Hillary, and her emails. So what I was suggesting yesterday was that someone would start leaking this document. I didn't think it would be today. I thought it might be in a couple of days, but it happened today. So that once it's leaked, it can't be rewritten. If someone has a copy of it, someone can show the original version, and now the opportunity for redacting it or for modifying it is dramatically reduced. I think that was the intention of the leak. Secondly, the leak, I think, also forces a much quicker release of the Inspector General's report, because now the public knows pretty much what's in it. And what's in it appears to be particularly damaging to James Comey, who appears to be being held out as the fall guy, you know, for being irresponsible and rogue and on his own trying to block Hillary Clinton from being prosecuted. Now, of course, that's going to set up immediately a fight between Comey and McCabe, because Comey's going to say, wait a minute, McCabe was in on this too. And then that's going to lead to Loretta Lynch. So we have a perfect prosecutorial setup here where the various witnesses are all going to be blaming each other for changing the story.
The so-called circular firing squad.
There are other less polite names for it, but that's what it amounts to. And I think that another thing I think is going to happen with this is going to be, it'll force the issue of a special counselor. I think we're much more going to have a special counselor coming out on this, and it'll be very likely that that happens quicker rather than later. And I want to thank some of the people who, Janine Tomaselli, I see people who on mine are regular followers and regular contributors, and I want to shout out to them as I see them.
Who do you think would be an appropriate person to take on that role of the new special counselor?
I think my candidate for the new Attorney General, and by the way, I continue not to trust Sessions. I think Sessions has been compromised and may, in fact, even be under yet criminal investigation by Mueller for not fully releasing the information in his confirmation hearings of the Senate that he was supervising both Carter Page and Papadopoulos, who are shaping up to be part of the spy team that was involved by Strozik and Page going back to December 2015. Okay, we now know that. At any rate, I think you're going to see here a situation where very quickly the Attorney General will be replaced. My candidate there is Giuliani.
Great.
And then for prosecutor, special prosecutor, my choice would be Andrew McCarthy.
Oh yeah, he'd be great.
Who is, former U.S. attorney who I think is a brilliant guy and honest and has an excellent reputation here in New York. Has been writing in National Review, I think, some very insightful articles on this entire Mueller prosecution effort, Mueller's investigation. And so I think if we had a combination of Giuliani and Andrew McCarthy, we would really get down to some truth here and some indictments that would go deeply into the deep state. But before we get, one other point I want to make is that what this does is even the leaking of Horowitz's report, I've been saying this is going to be game-changing. And now we've got a reframed situation which everybody's going to be focusing on, the Horowitz report and the news we have now of how, Hillary was let go. Now, whether it was because of Comey or because of Loretta Lynch or because of McCabe or because of Obama, that becomes the question.
Right.
But now the dialogue has changed.
Right.
I mean, it's kind of like Mueller who.
Right. Well, I agree with that. I think, though, that there's one modifier I'd make, which is that all along this has been a gaslighting exercise, to accuse Trump of doing stuff with Russia that, in fact, Clintons and Obamas and maybe the Bushes had been doing for a long period of time. And isn't the big question here, who authorized in the very beginning the Secretary of State to transact 100% of her business over these private, stupid servers using unsecured devices back by January 21st, 2009? And Mueller was head of the FBI during this process. How come he didn't see any of this? How come he let Hillary Clinton walk off the property on February 1st, 2013? He was still FBI director until September 4th, 2013. Why was Comey selected to replace him? What was the back and forth there? Why did it take so long to wrap up, and get some of these emails? And, who let Cheryl Mills and all these people still have all these emails until December 5th, 2014, right? Who let that happen? Why did it take so long to have an FBI process triggered July 10th, 2015? There's so many questions here. And, the notion that you would allow a team including, Mueller and Rosenstein to launch this witch hunt, while Donald Trump is president, is just, you got to understand the whole backstory here. And the American people deserve to know, why so many people were protecting Obama and likely maybe George W. Bush, the Bush. Why was this going on? How many dirty people are there still in Justice, the FBI, and the IRS? That's the big story.
Well, does it feel to you guys like they're sort of setting this up to just blame it all on Comey and then walk away like he was the mastermind and no one else was involved?
Well, one of the interesting things is I think, and by the way, Ted J.S., who I see repeatedly on live chats, thank you again for joining us today, and I really appreciate it. Look, there's a couple things here. One is, Charles, it's not only how did Hillary get away with it, who really authorized it, but how did Barack Obama have a private email address that nobody knew about, that he was using to communicate on Hillary's private server.
Right.
So that basically one of the arguments has been that Hillary wasn't prosecuted because if she was prosecuted, it would come out that Barack Obama was equally guilty of misusing highly classified information with this private email address that Obama had over the server. But secondly, I think Horowitz's report, while it's going to be extremely interesting in terms of what he learned as internal investigating the Department of Justice. Remember, as Inspector General, his powers were limited. He could only investigate people currently working in the Department of Justice. So I don't think Inspector General Horowitz had access to, for instance, Loretta Lynch or any information regarding Valerie Jarrett or Barack Obama. But we know at least we've got a shouting, pointing, fighting match going between Comey and McCabe, each of whom says the other is lying, which is a perfect prosecutorial setup. And I think it demands, it's going to put enormous pressure on Congress, which I think Devin Nunes is probably already aware of right now, that we need a special prosecutor because you cannot allow the Department of Justice to investigate itself, and the Inspector General's powers are very limited. This John Huber out in Utah might have prosecutorial authority, but he's also internal to the Department of Justice, and I have no confidence the Department of Justice will investigate itself.
Doctor, when you say it's the perfect prosecutorial setup, how do you mean?
Well, as a prosecutor, if I can get two key witnesses who each say the other lied, they're each going to produce for me enormous material telling me why the other was wrong, which implicates them both.
So they could kind of nuke each other.
They nuke each other, and in the process they nuke themselves. It's like calling an artillery strike on your own position. In order to defend yourself, you have the artillery launch an attack on your position because you've got to kill the enemy who's also occupying your territory.
This is really unprecedented in the history of the Department of Justice, isn't it?
This is going to be the most major, I think, scandal. I think President Trump is right. This is the biggest scandal in American history, period.
And it's not his.
President Trump is going to be able to have the catbird seat, get himself some popcorn, and watch it go on.
Right.
Perhaps he'll have the scandal-free presidency.
Well, I'm not going to give him that much of a... President Trump's capable of having his own scandals, I'm certain. But these don't happen to be them.
Right.
Because President Trump did not participate in collusion with Russia. He did not participate in the various kinds of schemes. Mueller's really out of gas. Mueller has nothing left that he can prove. because if all he can indict is 13 wacky Russians who posted some things on social media, and now we know that Mueller indicted a Russian company that didn't exist at the time it was accused of committing these crimes, that had employees that were not employees at the time they were supposed to have committed these crimes.
You know,
So,
Dr.
the misconduct and actual incompetence of Mueller, I think, is now shifting to be the theme about Mueller. And Mueller has a history of being a prosecutor like Pret Bahara, like Wiseman, who's on his staff. I mean, just read Sidney Powell's book, License to Lie, in which she details how all these Obama prosecutors are dirty criminal prosecutors who will violate the law to get a conviction.
It's pretty scary. You know, Doctor, it takes me back to our very first meeting, which was actually almost 1 year ago to the day. We were talking all about, of course, the hack versus leak, the issues with Seth Rich, etc.
Right.
All of that has kind of fallen by the wayside right now, but it does seem to be related, doesn't it?
Well, I mean, see, the way the narrative has changed, and it's been, fascinating to watch it, is if you remember, the original contention on Russian collusion was that Donald Trump had somehow colluded with the Russians, said, I'll ease up on sanctions, which Donald Trump did not do. If you go steal the emails from Hillary Clinton's server at the DNC and give them to WikiLeaks,
It's absurd,
which
really.
is preposterous.
On the
I mean,
face of it.
It's the kind of thing Hillary Clinton might try to do, but it's unlikely that Donald Trump would do that.
It's just ridiculous. I mean, if Russia had stolen them in the first place, Russia would keep them and use them. Russia wouldn't hand them off to WikiLeaks. Wouldn't need WikiLeaks involved in the process. And but see, this narrative got dropped by the wayside for several different reasons. First of all, the evidence became increasingly clear that the emails were not hacked. This was, again, that was CrowdStrike, which was a company that had been financed by $100 million by Eric Schmidt, who was head of Google. He was running Hillary's Get Out the Vote campaign at the time the leak occurred, all the evidence, I think, points to Seth Rich. Julian Assange has virtually said that, just sticking a thumb drive into a server in the DNC where he worked as a IT, employee.
Right.
But Doctor,
download all these emails.
Isn't it possible that Seth Rich has been used as a distraction? We've spoken quite a bit, Charles and I have, about Peter W. Smith and how he was pursuing these emails. He was involved with several individuals, including a guy named Matt Tate, who writes for a blog called Lawfare, which to me is using the legal system for warfare. And this guy is connected to GCHQ, Google Project Zero, which seems to be an internal Google group of super hackers that were possibly just doing the bidding of Eric Schmidt.
Well, I think, Peter Schmidt was a very shadowy figure. I never met Peter Smith.
That's right.
And Peter Smith. I mean, I never met Peter Smith. And I think he had some influence in all of this, but was more, I think, on the periphery. The real issue with the Seth Rich is that it dropped out of the narrative because Mueller in his investigation could never prove any link with Donald Trump because there was never any real communication with Donald Trump to have made any deal with Russia to steal the emails. And it would have been very hard in court, I think, to prove that it was a Russian hack. That Russia would have been prepared to make clear that, and Assange had the information which would be definitive as to where he got the emails, and he could be deposed, and would make it clear that he didn't get them from Russia. Now, the whole narrative with Mueller shifted. Then Mueller, began to go over to obstruction of justice. But what really happened was that the narrative began moving against the deep state, in that we began getting these leaks. We began from Inspector General's first report that Strozik and Page, these two Department of Justice officials, and Strozik headed or was number 2, I guess, in the counterintelligence operation, and very involved in planning these spies.
With McCabe.
With McCabe and with a guy named Priestap,
Right.
who testified yesterday in the Senate as evidently turning state's evidence.
Pretty good.
And over here again, I see in my live chat stream, I want to thank everybody there. I think there's a few trolls, but not very many, and I appreciate those of you over there who always do go fight the trolls. I'm kind of keeping an eye on it, and I want to thank you all for being here. And I see you're following it very closely. I see Ford Patron, this is one of my followers who always says, Corsi Nation. I always appreciate that. So I'm watching and very appreciative of all those following us from around the world on my live stream, and also following on Jason's live stream simultaneously.
I'm showing your stream right now, Doctor. We're sort of like the video version of a box of cream of wheat. That's the guy holding the box, holding the box. But people who aren't currently subscribed to Dr. Corsi can find him on YouTube just by searching his name, Jerome Corsi. And of course, viewers of Jerome Corsi who maybe aren't familiar with Crowdsource the Truth can see our live streams for the next 2 weeks on the 21st Century 3D channel, which is my previous 3D motion picture production company, and you can just search 21C3D. Of course, we're looking forward to returning to full live stream capability on the main Crowdsource the Truth channel in just 2 weeks. And it's ironic you bring up the trolls, Doctor. I know most conventional thinking would encourage us to ignore the trolls, but the problem there is that it really creates this area where truly insidious individuals can operate with impunity, and they can be effective. We don't want to give them too much time.
Well, I've had, there's several on my live stream who are regulars who fight the trolls. They come on and they announce they're going to fight the trolls.
That's
and
good.
I encourage them. American Patriot is one. There's several. I see people here are fighting the trolls. And so the trolls don't go unanswered.
That's right.
And that way they don't have the field day in the live stream. I rarely address them, but I'll let the others in the live stream fight them, and I always acknowledge and appreciate that.
Yeah, that's a
because
good thing to do.
It's a good tactic, I think.
And Dr. Corsi, as I look at the shot here from your live stream, I'm slightly jealous. Whenever I show up, it's always set up the cameras right away, but next time perhaps we'll go from over there looking this way, all the books and everything. So
well, the study's a great place to have a.
It is.
And the books are just a tremendous backdrop. Of course, this has been one of my libraries. This is probably my third library in my life.
Really? It's nice.
But this has most of the books I've used to write. I've written, I think, 30 books since 2004.
Wow.
And of course, the newest book.
Oh, that
Dr.
we don't.
Corsi.
There we are. It's this is good to show because it's got the banner on it.
Show
Here
the
we
camera.
go. I can show that one.
Yeah. Killing the Deep State. That was a New York Times bestseller for 4 weeks, right?
Yeah, a little unabashed capitalism here. It's 4 weeks. I'm very pleased with it.
That's
It
very
did very
good.
well. Yeah, it was one of my, I think, better known books.
Mm-hmm.
And New York Times bestsellers, I've now had 7 of them, which I'm very pleased at.
Wow.
Very timely as well, as it seems that the IG report would be the death knell, as it were, for certain key members of the deep state. And certainly as those dominoes begin to fall, we're going to learn a lot about some of these long-standing crimes of people like the Clintons.
Yeah.
Well, see, what's happening, this has, I think, been critical, and what I wrote in Killing Deep State, I think, has been very accurate, and I predicted that there would be 3 phases. The first phase would be Donald Trump would have to survive the attempt to impeach him, and I think that's now done. The second phase is going to be a counterattack, in which Donald Trump, I think, now goes on the offensive. We'll have a new special prosecutor, and that will go maybe through most of this first term. And then following that, the third phase I'm predicting will be military courts, and we will have treason trials that will reach all the way up to Hillary and to Barack Obama. We'll have both of those occurring.
That's good news. You
I
made
mean,
my
that'll
day.
be earth-shaking.
And I
won't
think
it?
that's where it's going.
Charles, what do you think
And
about that? We've never
Donnie
seen,
Giebert, thank you very much.
we've never seen a military tribunal for a former U.S. president.
Well, you see, this is the classic approach these psychopaths take. I mean, they engage in behavior that is so abhorrent, and then they rely on the incurious public to buy the argument that, well, no one's ever been prosecuted for murdering 100,000 people before. You can't, just because I've murdered 100,000 people, you can't put me in, baloney. This behavior is rampant criminality, and I would say the opposite argument needs to be made, that if we let this stand, this precedent stand, and I would argue it's not only Obama and Clinton, it goes into the Bushes, and it goes way back. We let this type of venal criminality stand, that has taken this country so far off the straight and narrow course it should be on, maximizing our greatness. And then who knows who's going to come along 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20, say, well, look, the Obamas got away with it. We're going to take this to, a different, worse level.
I think the deep state miscalculated.
Yeah.
And only Donald Trump, I think, could do this. This is, I think, one of the brilliant features of Donald Trump. I've known him for a long time, and I think you're going to see what I'm just going to explain now, and that is Donald Trump has set this up with his tweets and made it clear that there is no case against him. And we now are increasingly looking at Mueller as a dirty prosecutor. General Flynn didn't lie, we know that. We know that Sally Yates came over and lied to say, to tell Trump that Flynn was not under investigation, showed the 302 report to Donald Trump that had been altered by Strozik and Page. Okay, now where it changes is, and the phase we're about to go into, the counterattack, it's going to be interesting because it's going to be a little bit like a soap opera.
Already is.
In other words, we're going to find all these characters, and we're going to get to listen to them all point fingers at each other. And we ought to have congressional hearings where we can have them on TV every day. I predict if we could do that, people will be glued to the television and watching it 8 or 10 hours a day, because one after the other, you're going to see this cast of characters: Comey, McCabe, Priestap, people we don't know. You're going to get 27 or 28 FBI already want to testify against what was going on inside the FBI. We're going to find out, all about Brennan, how he ran the CIA. Now we know the Strozik and Page, and by the way, the Senate earlier this week released 500 pages of Strozik Page unredacted text messages. Well, I didn't think that was a surprise, or that was not accidental, because it was a telegraph again, because we were being told that Horowitz's report was 500 pages. So the Senate said, okay,
A lot of text.
let me show you what we can do. And by the way, if you guys try to redact Horowitz's report, we'll have it unredacted and we can release that too. All President Trump has to do is declassify all these documents, and we can read them all. Okay, so now we're going to get into, what was this love affair between Strozik and Page? Why didn't the two get divorced? How did they have time for sex, writing 10,000 emails to each other in this short period of time? What was the nature of McCabe? Who was in charge of the FBI? Who was in charge? What was Loretta Lynch doing in the tarmac with Bill Clinton?
Excellent question.
So all these things now are going to be the new narrative, and the old narrative shifts. Now, as Mueller, all you have to do to get rid of Mueller is put him under investigation, criminal investigation, for his role in the Uranium One cover-up.
How about 9/11?
Well, 9/11, there's any number. I mean, HSBC cover-up.
Right.
He's been Mueller's worth $18 million. You don't get that in a government pension. You get that. And Charles, I think all the work you've done for all these years, which has been remarkable on the Clinton Foundation.
Thank you.
Now that's going to come out.
I hope so. I mean, I actually think, I can't wait to see the work-related and potentially work-related emails having to do with the Clinton Foundation, which probably are about, 30,000 emails that she's admitted to
Well, why
destroying.
would you have a private email server unless you wanted to hide the emails?
Well, because I mean, this is what they were doing with that Clinton Global Initiative, and you wrote about it. That was just, you know, that was the Clinton graft initiative. I mean, that was if you want to get something out of the U.S. government, send a wire, give a bag full of cash to the Clinton graft initiative, and you get what you want.
And now it's tied into Chemex, and what we
So,
found
yeah.
in this it looks like child trafficking camp outside of Tucson.
Has that been confirmed, Doctor?
It's being investigated. The videos on the internet are pretty compelling. You got a Rothschild who's mayor. You got the Rothschilds and Bronfmans who have invested in Chemex, which is a Mexican company.
Right.
But that Chemex was part of the Clinton Global Initiative. They were a featured company in the Clinton Global Initiative.
That's a, you know, Mexican cement company. What could possibly go wrong with that?
Get some shoes.
Right up the Clinton's alleys.
That's right, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, also with Bill Clinton and this book tour, I think he's opening himself up again, not only to Me Too charges, but to all of the revisiting all of the crimes of the Clinton Foundation. You know, what about Haiti? What about the child trafficking out of Haiti? The fact that the Clintons, I think, may have stolen at least $1 billion of aid out of the Haiti disaster.
And what about Epstein?
What about Epstein? And by the way, the Epstein now with these vaults, what you've been reading, Charles, releasing on the Epstein papers, it's clear that Epstein turned state evidence to Mueller, who was head of the
Right.
FBI, and I'm sure that was to get the evidences on the Clintons going to Epstein's island so it could be covered up.
Right.
Because nothing ever happened with that. He got lighter sentences. He was given some kind of a deal by the FBI.
It was like 18 months in prison
Right.
for a pretty horrendous crime. You know, Doctor, a lot of people have speculated that Jeffrey Epstein is associated with Mossad, and that's why he did not go to jail for very long, or that's how he got this island or whatever. Is it possible that a deal with the Department of Justice would be the reason why those things happened? Do we have any evidence or indication? I mean, you and I have also both been accused of being associated with
Well,
Mossad.
I mean, you know, I'm not sure. Mossad is always, there's certain people always out there on the internet who blame Israel for everything. And I think Israel sometimes would wish it could be as powerful as people blame it to be. I don't see it being the case. And, you know, there's no way that Epstein is Mossad. I mean, there's no possible way.
Why do you say that?
Well, I mean, first of all, he wasn't born in Israel. He doesn't have any of the qualifications for it whatsoever.
But wouldn't
Mossad would have no
Mossad-
interest in him.
Wouldn't they use any asset available to them, or you have to be born in Israel to
Well, being born in Israel is a real requirement. I mean, in terms
is.
of certainly in advancing into Mossad, and you're not going to get welcomed into Mossad unless you're, you know, Sabra, born in Israel. That's the whole qualification, really, for Mossad. All this idea that this guy's Mossad or that guy is Mossad is just simply the hate Israel crowd
I agree.
trying to, you know, dig up some other reason to hate Israel.
Right.
But, you know, you don't need to be bringing in anything with regards to, you know, the basic thing is that, you know, when you're dealing with Epstein, you know, basically, he's an informant, essentially. He was busted during the Clinton years. He was for this island, this sex island. The FBI and Mueller knew the Clintons were involved. They knew a bunch of other people were involved. And these were crimes being committed. And what the Mueller decided to do at the Clintons' behest, because he's always been a Clinton fixer, you know, he goes into the FBI for a while, then he goes out, and then he gets a $3.5 million job with a law firm. That's how he gets to be worth $18 million. The deep state takes care of him. So Mueller said, I'll debrief Epstein, get all the information from Epstein on the Clintons, and I'll bury it. Nothing will ever happen with it. We'll give Epstein a deal. We'll make sure he doesn't talk. We won't prosecute him too severely. But, you know, the idea that he's Mossad is nonsense. It's just ridiculous. He is a low-life, rich guy who's a pedophile.
Charles has pointed out a number of anomalies in the life story of Jeffrey Epstein in terms of how he acquired this money and his teaching at Dalton School.
Yeah.
So many questions swirling around that guy.
Well, Epstein was one of the Wall Street hustlers in the go-go years, and there were many of them that made some money.
Well, actually, so he, I don't think he ever went to college. I don't think he was graduated from college.
I don't know.
And he somehow landed a job as a tutor at Dalton, which is it's a rival school to the one I went to. So you can't take what I say with, you got to take what I say with a grain of salt. But it's a school for dumb rich kids, basically, in the main, or it was back then. And basically, that said, the faculty all have college degrees. Some of them have master's degrees, some even have PhDs at places like this. The notion that he would go in and be teaching math on the faculty without a college degree is rubbish. He somehow ended up being, I think he tutored Ace Greenberg's child, or a top person at Bear Stearns, and through that he got into the Bear Stearns apparatus. Now that place is no longer with us officially, it's part of JP Morgan, but when I was working at Dillon Reed and afterwards, I mean, that place was not a place where somebody with no education is going to suddenly become a billionaire trading against the world. That story is rubbish in my view. He did not make $1 billion legitimately any which way from Sunday.
Well, I mean, I'm sure he was taken care of by the New York group that wanted to have an Epstein Island, Lolita Island. But the point is, we want to talk about Mossad. The reality is that Epstein had nothing to do with Mossad. Mossad actually collected a lot of information in the years around 2000 on these sex pedophiles around the world. The information was given to Holder, and Holder covered it up. So between Holder and Mueller, they've been massive cover-up artists to protect the Clintons and others who've been involved in these pedophile sex trades very deeply. So Mossad has always been a white hat, and I've been extremely pleased with, Donald Trump's appreciation of the importance of Israel to the United States strategically in the Middle East, and the moving of the embassy to Jerusalem, I think, is a historic, virtually a biblical event. I've always viewed it as such. But to get back to what I see going on right now, the point I want to make is that yesterday and today, the narrative has shifted.
It's important.
Okay, we are now at the end. I want to look at what Giuliani told directly to Mueller. First of all, it came out that Giuliani said in an interview over the weekend that Donald Trump could pardon himself. Okay, now that was not accidental. And in fact, if you read the pardon clause in the Constitution, the president does have unlimited power. He just can't pardon himself from impeachment. And now Trump immediately says, look, I'm not going to pardon myself. That would be politically disastrous to do. But the point to Mueller was, if you've got something, then go for impeachment now. Because otherwise we could just pardon ourselves and walk away from this whole thing. So take your pick. We can pardon ourselves and tell you you're done. Or if you've got something, it's in poker, it'd be calling the bluff.
Right.
It's poker. I've always said, people who criticize Donald Trump, he's definitely a very good poker player.
So I'll call you, show me your cards.
And Clapper would be a very bad poker player.
Right. Okay, so let me carry this forward, okay? So that's the issue on Trump pardoning himself. And the point is that forces Mueller's hand because it wasn't put out there totally in jest.
Right.
In other words, it is a strategy. Trump can pardon himself, and it's over. But he's given Mueller a chance to bring an impeachment case. If Mueller doesn't have it, then why not pardon himself?
It's also a chess game, isn't it, Doctor?
And secondly, the other thing that happened was, and this was equally important, is that they went back and forth on this idea of whether Trump can be forced to testify. And so Mueller says, well, I'll just subpoena you to a grand jury, then you'll have to testify. Well, over the weekend again, Giuliani said, wait a minute, we'll take that to the Supreme Court. So go ahead and subpoena us. We'll go to the Supreme Court, and we'll win at the Supreme Court. And I believe Trump would win at the Supreme Court. So now Mueller's essentially been checkmated.
Right.
If you have something, bring in charges on impeachment to the House. The House is never going to vote impeachment. Even though there's a lot of Republicans who don't like Trump, they're never going to vote impeachment. And not with the midterms coming up. Okay, and the other part of this is that Trump is saying, I'm not going to testify. So you're not going to get anything out of me. And if you want me to testify, I want to force that issue, subpoena me, we'll go to the Supreme Court. Now those challenges were laid down on the weekend. And then we get today Horowitz's report leaked. Okay, so now the game is shifting into what I'm calling the counterattack, and we're ending the first phase because Mueller's been called. Now Giuliani said, I heard it this afternoon, and he was being interviewed after the leak of the Horowitz report, and the reporters were all outside of the White House. I think it happened yesterday, but it was being run today. They were saying, is Trump going to fire Mueller? And Giuliani, with this kind of sly smile, said, Trump isn't going to have to fire Mueller. He doesn't have to fire Mueller. Mueller's got his own problems. Well, now, if you're Mueller, hello, that means, look, baby, here's your choices.
Right.
You got something, bring it.
Right.
You don't have it, close up shop, or we're investigating you next for Uranium One, for the Epstein deal, for HSBC, for 9/11, and everything else we can think of. You're going to be under criminal investigation the rest of your life.
Benghazi.
Benghazi.
I don't think there should be any cards for Mr. Mueller to play. I think he should be investigated for the rest of his life.
I do too. But the point is, you see, in this game of poker or chess, whatever, Trump has he has checkmated Mueller and basically said, next move is yours. Now, if you want to play the game out the last 6 moves to see if I'm capable of actually, doing the deed, fine, I'll play the last 6 moves, but you're checkmated in 6. What do you want to do? You can resign, or let's play. So, effectively, Trump has ended Mueller.
Well done.
And well done. I don't think the public has realized that yet, but that's what I see going on in the dynamics of what's just happened. I want to thank JV. Yes, a good comment here. Please remember to pray for Trump and Dr. Corsi. Thank you very much to guide us, protect us, and always keep us in God's hand. I think that's a great prayer, and JV, thank you very much. Your comments are very well appreciated and very much heartfelt.
I think the sentiment in that comment is kind of close to what I'm thinking, which is, these guys, Mueller, McCabe, Comey, they don't just say, oh, well, we lost, so we'll go home. They're going to dig in harder, and they just become more and more desperate as the wood is put to them, and I think that Trump is in a very dangerous position because they want him dead politically. If they can't achieve that, who knows what they'll try. Right.
Well, I think that's what they invented bunker busters for, right?
Well, see, look, again, let's look at this kind of from the 35,000 feet view. Okay, now today all of the news you're going to talk about is what's in the Horowitz report on Hillary, and so the entire focus is shifted. It's reframed. Okay, now we're going to look at what Hillary really did, including the foundation. It's going to go back to the foundation. Charles is finally going to get an opportunity to really have all this research, I think, be brought forward and thoroughly investigated. And Bill Clinton out with his book tour isn't helping anything because he's likely to get a serious lawsuit from one or more of these women if the statute of limitations hasn't worn out. The same as Weinstein and Bill Cosby found themselves confronted with.
Right.
Clinton's not past that yet.
Right.
He thinks he's being pretty cute with writing a book with James Patterson. By the way, Patterson also wrote a book on Epstein.
That's right, yeah. That's nonfiction.
Nonfiction. It's quite good,
right.
too.
Yeah.
Whoa.
I don't know how Clinton ever got together after that book. But Clinton is confident that Mueller's got everything hid.
Right.
And buried. And that's the point. I think that's exactly the point. You know, the point I'm trying to make is that when the narrative shifts, when the reframing occurs, now we go back into looking at these cases. So the Russian troll case could easily get thrown out of court
Right.
for prosecutorial misconduct. I mean, how could we try a case where you indicted a company that doesn't exist? There's employees who weren't working there.
Well, they raised billions of dollars for a company that didn't exist. Why not indict one?
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Secondly, Flynn's case. How can Flynn go to prison when we know now that Mueller got him to plead guilty to lying by threatening his son to be investigated and criminally prosecuted?
Particularly low.
Yeah, I mean, isn't it the case, when we think about the balance of power between our government and the people who actually are responsible for the government, not servants of the government, we invest such awesome power in the hands of the prosecutors that it strikes me when you see this level of prosecutorial misconduct, and let's not forget that Bill Clinton, as Attorney General of Arkansas and as governor and as president, engaged in this type of prosecutorial misconduct. You can't let this kind of stuff stand unexamined, uninvestigated, and unpunished.
Right.
I mean, I think Robert Mueller, who was trot out to us as a war hero and a decent person and bipartisan support, no, he's a swamp monster.
Yeah.
It's obvious. And you start hearing these cases that Sidney Powell's written so eloquently about and others have spoken about. I mean, the full truth needs to be known about Weissman and Mueller and all these people, and they need to be not only disbarred, but they, in full, let's have a real justice system go after them, let them be convicted, and let the sentencing judge stand up there and say, look, if Corinne Brown's going to go to prison for 5 years for an $800,000 fraud, you, sir, Mr. Mueller, forget about daylight. You're going into a supermax, 23 hours a day, 6 days a week, and we'll give you an extra hour off on Sundays. Well, that's it for the rest of your life.
This is where all these prosecutors are corrupt. I've got a comment here from Jake Schreffler, who has been commenting on my live stream the last couple of days. The corrupt Department of Justice prosecutor who covered up perjury by a witness in the case against Senator Ted Stevens.
Right.
Okay, and that's also the subject in Sidney Powell's book, License to Lie. It was also a prosecutor against Francis Schaefer Cox, which is another corrupt prosecution, which I'm going to be getting into here in the next few days. And I was at the hearing last week. I went downtown to New York to the Court of Appeals in the Thurgood Marshall building, and there was a Pret Bahara case where the same guy who prosecuted Dinesh D'Souza,
Right.
For a minor offense, wanted to put Dinesh D'Souza into prison for a long time for something that if Hillary Clinton supporter had done, they would have excused. Well, this case was about William Walters, who is a famous Las Vegas gambler who was prosecuted for insider trading. But Bahara had to admit to the court. First he denied it. They tried to hide it. But for 4 years, the lead FBI agent on the case, whose name was Chavez, David Chavez, was running leaking to the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal on a systematic basis for 4 years.
Wow.
2 years before Billy Walters was indicted. Grand jury information.
He needs to go to jail.
Well, they recommended David Chavez for jail, and you know what happened to him? The judge said, what happened? Judge Castle, the trial judge. Well, it turned out that they let him retire, and he's now running a hedge fund, David Chavez, in New York City.
Outrageous.
Okay, and so the 3-judge panel in the Court of Appeals are trying to be sympathetic to the trial judge, who they want to say did not make a huge mistake, reversible mistake. And the prosecution, the attorney, the woman who's representing Pret Bahara, starts doing her 3-man argument before the circuit court. And one of the judges says, wait a minute, this case involves remarkable prosecutorial misconduct. And she had to agree.
Wow.
I mean, these are the kinds of prosecutors that we have here. And now as this narrative shifts, and this is, I think, the brilliance of what Trump has done, is that our attention is now focused on Mueller as being part of the deep state. Remember, he was supposed to have come on. He's the incorruptible. He's going to find justice. Well, after a year, he couldn't find. He indicted a ham sandwich.
A Russian ham sandwich.
He indicted Flynn, who was framed for lying, and he indicted Mueller for things that were done 10 years ago. 10 years before Trump even was running. Trump's campaign was 2015, 2016. The offenses that Mueller's indicted Manafort for were in 2005 and 2006.
That's outrageous.
They've already been passed on by the FBI and the Department of Justice. And Manafort's lawyer said he will be found innocent.
And Doctor, what do you think will happen to these guys if Flynn is found to be innocent and set up? Can he be reinstated? Will he? I mean, he's been financially ruined.
Well, see, this is another part of the corrupt nature of Manafort, of Mueller, because, okay, so General Flynn had to sell his house. Now, General Flynn is a 30-year career military intelligence Army veteran who was fired by Obama because
he said Obama created ISIS.
Because he objected to Hillary Clinton and John McCain illegally running weapons from Libya through Turkey into Syria to arm and fund the so-called moderate rebels.
In defiance of Congress.
In defiance of Congress, completely in defiance of Congress, and who turned out to be ISIS.
Yeah.
And when Chris Stevens died that night in Benghazi, and Hillary watching it in the Situation Room somewhere, did nothing to save him, because she didn't want him living to tell the truth about running the weapons. Now, I was sitting in the testimony when one of the generals said, well, we had planes in Italy we could send, but we couldn't refuel them. They went to Benghazi. We said, well, this is nonsense. Every military pilot I've ever known would say, okay, you can refuel that plane and it can get there, fine, I'm going. If I have to ditch the plane in the Mediterranean, you'll get a new plane.
Right.
But I'm going.
Yeah. Hey, on that subject, Jerry, did you see Dump 22, the Hillary R. Clinton Dump 22?
No, I have not. Those I've not been. You've been keeping up more with the vaults than I have been.
That's because you know so much about Benghazi. You're going to want to look at that because there's a whole bunch of documents. It's like 439 pages that came out, all having to do with events right around Benghazi. And it turns out there was a report, September 6th, I think it was, 2012, issued by the State Department, which said there's little to no chance of anything significant happening on September 11th, 2012.
Right.
And these are frantic emails about it. Well, how did this?
Like 600.
How did these different New York Post people get this report? How do you know? We scrubbed that, and then it gets into this whole issue about Mohammed Morsi being a problem, and then being asked to speak at the Clinton Foundation Global Initiative on September 26, 2012. It's a treasure trove of information for you.
And see, look, Obama supported Morsi because the Muslim Brotherhood were controlling it. The whole thing with the Arab Spring was to get the Muslim Brotherhood and ISIS to destabilize northern Africa. That's what they did in Libya. Now, Ambassador Stevens was there before he was ambassador. He came in a cargo ship to Benghazi to set up the gun running. Now, my theory on what happened to Stevens, you remember the last night of his life, he had a dinner
Turkish guy.
with the Turkish consulate, and they were in Benghazi. And I think Stevens caught on to Hillary Clinton's criminal scheme. And I think he was going to blow the whistle on it. He'd had enough. He didn't take this position to be a gun runner, violating Congress. So the whole thing in the build-up to Benghazi, when it occurred, Hillary and Obama had no interest in saving Chris Stevens because they would rather he be dead. He didn't want him talking about the gun running. And here, this whole gun running into Syria, which I think is at the heart of a lot of what Benghazi was all about. Again, it comes up so that if we really go through the next phase, as we really get into who the Clintons were and the crimes they've committed, I think this whole issue of Benghazi is going to be revisited.
Should be.
And Mueller is, again, going to be at the heart of it.
Sure.
Because Mueller's head of the FBI and cover. Why isn't the FBI aware of the gun running?
Another thing that's in that dump is apparently CNN ran with a story that they had somehow managed, somebody close to CNN had managed to get a copy of Christopher Stevens' diary.
Right.
And that in that diary, supposedly, Stevens may have admitted that he was terrified about the security situation in Libya and in Benghazi before September 11, 2012, which is totally counter to all the fables spun by Susan Rice
Right.
and others on the Sunday talk shows. So, and the thing that's really interesting about that piece of the documents, these are emails back and forth to CNN, to Anderson Cooper, complaining about what Cooper had said, threatening Anderson Cooper, threatening CNN. And when we think about this, so CNN was basically on the wrong side of Obama right before the debates. Does this explain Candy Crowley's behavior in the debate, tipping it?
Very likely.
Yeah.
But see, what's happening, I think, is if I'm looking again back to the larger picture, I'm talking about the Trump strategy to close out phase one,
Right.
which is to end the Mueller prosecution, to end the entire special investigation. Now we come to Mueller, and Giuliani's the right guy to do it. And in one of these sit-downs with Mueller, which he said, you got anything, file articles of impeachment, your report on that with the House. If you don't, we could pardon ourselves and you're done. Pardon everybody else too. Secondly, if you want us to testify, go get a subpoena. The grand jury. We'll take it to the Supreme Court. We'll see who wins in the Supreme Court. And by the way, third, if you want to stick around as special prosecutor, once the narrative shifts, which it did today, we're going to investigate you for, let's see, what is it going to be? Uranium-1, for Epstein,
Anna Chapman.
for Benghazi, for Hillary Clinton, and that you knew that Hillary Clinton, Mueller, was into the pedophilia. And by the way, I'm sure you didn't connect it to any of the WikiLeaks about John Podesta and the hanky-panky that was suggested in those WikiLeaks releases.
You mean the spirit cooking and all the weird stuff?
Pizzagate and all that.
You know what I'm saying? Really, I'm sure, Mueller, you don't want us to visit this.
Right.
Or Benghazi, or 9/11.
Yeah.
But, Mueller, it'd be fine if you want to just continue. You could be special prosecutor until you're put in jail yourself. Take your pick.
Boy, that would be something.
How's your summer shaping up, Bob?
Yeah. Don't
Well,
buy
I mean,
any
look.
green bananas.
When you bring in Giuliani to deal with this, and I've been saying this from the beginning, is that the way to end Mueller is to put him under a criminal investigation himself. And then he'll have no choice but to end the special prosecutor and to move on himself to defend himself, which is really, I think, how it should be done.
Dr. Corsi, just about a week ago, Larry Klayman had a FOIA lawsuit against the special counsel's office to try to obtain the communications between Mueller's office and the press. And Larry believes they've been leaking, as McCabe was, and some of these other type of classified information leaks, information from a grand jury that Larry says would implicate Mueller in some pretty serious crimes. It could take him out that way quite easily. It's almost like a pebble gumming up the works.
I've got to type a little thing here. I'm going to tell him to stop mowing the lawn while we're broadcasting.
Well, of course, we're here at Dr. Corsi's office. Beautiful home, and this office is a spectacular location to do a live stream broadcast in for people who are watching on Crowdsource The Truth or periscope.tv/CS The Truth. You can also watch Dr. Corsi's regular live stream broadcasts on his YouTube channel, and you've got a huge audience watching right now, Doctor. We've got 1,173, And people who are on some of the other channels that we're seen on can tune into Dr. Corsi there. Just search for Jerome Corsi on YouTube. And where else do you like people to follow you, Doctor?
I'm on, I do a lot on Twitter these days. And Twitter, you can get me on
At lowercase
Jerome _ Corsi, C-O-R-S-I. Almost all my social media can be found through my name, Jerome Corsi. And we just made one more here, and I'll try to get the...
Certainly. And of course, I'm following Dr. Corsi. He's always tweeting about interesting things. It's really great how people can get information from so many different sources and compare the analysis and come to a conclusion that's not some spoon-fed bunch of nonsense coming from some giant corporate-owned ridiculous thing. And you know, I always try to encourage everyone to support Crowdsource the Truth and to support Dr. Corsi and anyone who's doing independent reporting. It isn't free, and it does need the financial support of the viewers.
I want to kind of go in another direction here as we're
Sure.
pursuing all this. And I want to talk about how I think this second phase, the counterattack, is going to shape up. First of all, there's going to be a recognition today, starting today, where the House, where there's already a bill on the House which has, I think, over 100 sponsors to have a special prosecutor.
Yeah.
And now people are going to be saying, once they get a hold of the Inspector General's report, that how can we trust the Department of Justice to
Sure.
inspect itself? As I pointed out, this David Chavez, who leaked for 4 years in the Billy Walters case. And by the way, the Billy Walters case has either got to be reversed on appeal or he needs to be pardoned. Because this is another prosecutorial misconduct from Mueller and Wiseman, Pret Mahara, this whole corrupt group under Obama that were out to get convictions no matter what laws they had to violate. And so the emphasis is going to change now onto the corruption. I mean, think about this for a minute. We now understand that Strozik and Page, from the emails we just got, the 500 pages that were released on Monday, are talking about this Okanus, you know, the outside the continental United States.
Lures.
Lures, which means entrapment spies, in a
outrageous.
counterintelligence operation. Now, the importance of this is, you see, if they did this in the United States, they'd be clearly violating all of the national security laws about running counterintelligence operations against U.S. citizens. But if they do it overseas, which, by the way, the Department of Justice should be allowing the CIA to do, which suggests to me from the beginning that John Brennan was involved in this. My guess is John Brennan picked the overseas agents, plugged them into the Department of Justice, who then put them together with Department of Justice spy moles. So you get Carter Page and Papadopoulos, and papers released again this week, the court papers from Papadopoulos. We now know he was a government agent.
And you're convinced that Carter Page was as well?
Yes, because in 2015, Carter Page was involved in a similar Russia scam case, giving states evidence for the FBI and Department of Justice, and didn't get prosecuted.
It's interesting, right, Doctor? There's all these people that are involved, not to go back to the Seth Rich thing, but I'm always brought back, I think about this Kim.com.
Yes.
He had a whole thing with the Department of Justice raiding his house. He's claimed to have all this information about Seth Rich. We've heard nothing from Kim.com.
Well, let's stay on this track for a minute.
Sure.
I want to stay here because this is, you know, really important. So you've got now Strozik and Page saying, we're going to work with outside the United States lures. So you read Stephen Halper,
Right.
who is, you know, this Cambridge professor, who, by the way, also released this week his 1994 or 5 crack cocaine conviction in New York City.
That's tough to do.
Who was that with the crack cocaine?
Stefan Halper.
Oh, right. Wow.
Now you know where he comes up with his theories.
That's also why his skin looks so good.
That was when Bill was still president.
Yeah, and so they say, so Halper and this other guy with Downey or Downer from Australia.
He's
Right.
yeah.
So
bad
they
dude.
sit in London and they say, come over and talk to us, to the people who are working in the Trump campaign. Now, the people who come over are the two agents working for the Department of Justice, Carter Page and Papadopoulos. They run over and they start talking about Russia with each other, which is all concocted by the CIA and the FBI. And then that's the basis, one of the bases for doing the electronic surveillance.
Outrageous.
And so what you've essentially got, and this goes back to December 2015, which is before the primaries. So you've got the Department of Justice deciding to run a counterintelligence operation internationally against the opposing party's presidential candidate.
That sounds like a scandal-free presidency to me.
And I can't imagine this wasn't approved at Barack Obama's level. I can't imagine that Valerie Jarrett wasn't in the middle of it. Strozek and Page have emails and they say Obama wants to be briefed on every aspect of this.
Right.
All the fruit, the product of the electronic surveillance from the FISA court gets delivered to the White House. The names get unmasked. And then they get released to the press.
It's amazing.
And I'm sure in a 500-page report that we're going to get here from Horowitz, we're going to have chapter and verse on each of the leaks. I mean, think what 500 pages, single-spaced, how much there's going to be in this.
Wow.
It's a long book.
And the story is going to be about now, if they ran a counterintelligence operation like this, and its purpose was to get someone they didn't like, it'd still be major crimes. But if they run it in order to derail a presidential candidate of the opposite party, and then continue it after he's duly elected,
Sedition.
to derail the transition, and continue it after he's in the White House with FISA continuing court applications to derail the presidency, I believe this is called sedition or treason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the nature of these crimes now are being committed in order to derail a duly elected president.
It's outrageous.
It is.
It's that it would continue after January 20th, 2017. And that, Rod Rosenstein, who really deserves to be hauled right up in front of a grand jury, would sign a FISA request as late as September 2017. This is nuts.
Well, then I want to go back now to Jeff Sessions, because what Jeff Sessions shows up as Attorney General, and he gets to learn from Rosenstein and McCabe that he's been under criminal investigation for lying to the Senate in the confirmation hearings, because he didn't fully disclose all of his conversations with Carter Page and with Papadopoulos.
Or Kislyak.
If I may, when Sessions arrives as Attorney General, was Rosenstein already there, or did he come afterwards?
He's there, I think. Well, certainly McCabe was there.
McCabe was there, but I don't know about...
McCabe could have told him for sure. I think Rosenstein was there, and I think he was elevated into the position of deputy. I have to check that in a second, but I think he was there. Yeah. At any rate, it turns out that Sessions in the campaign was supervising Page and Papadopoulos. And they were talking about Russia. Now, here's how it would go. Papadopoulos would say, I believe if Trump would just ease up, say he would ease up on the sanctions, Putin would work with us. And by the way, I think they've got some dirt on Hillary. So all Trump had to do was give some statements during the campaign about easing up on Russia. And the Department of Justice thought they had their quid pro quo to prove collusion. You get the emails for us, or you go and do social media against Hillary, you do something to help us defeat her, and we'll ease up on sanctions. Of course, now, Trump didn't do that.
Yeah, the reverse.
Okay, but the idea was, Strozek and Page said, and McCabe, well, if we can only do the electronic surveillance where we can also get Sessions, certainly some of these guys are going to bite on easing sanctions, and we'll have what we need to prove collusion. Now, that didn't happen. But Sessions, who didn't fully disclose this in his confirmation hearings has perhaps committed a crime of lying to Congress under oath.
Seems to be very popular these days, Doctor.
And Sessions shows up as Attorney General, and they say, you know, we had a criminal investigation on you that we haven't closed, and could easily transfer to Mueller. Or perhaps, since Papadopoulos has been indicted, you might be a material witness in the Papadopoulos case. And Rosenstein might be a material witness too, because he was supervising, I believe, you know, at some point or other, he was passing off on various of these decisions that were being made. And I'd like to find out, we'll find out here in a minute, when Rosenstein was in the Department of Justice. I know he was supervising for Justice the IRS during the Lois Lerner scandal.
Well, yeah. So what Rosenstein was, he was in Maine Justice from 2001 to 2005, overseeing the tax division.
Right.
And then he became U.S. Attorney in Baltimore.
Right.
Which I think he was, he transitioned out of that to be Deputy Attorney General. I want to say it's in April of 2017.
Well, let's find out here. It's pretty easy to get it right here.
Doctor, would you say a lot of this stuff that you're describing is pretty textbook counterintelligence operations?
No, this is all unorthodox.
Unorthodox.
Yeah, because you see, Rosenstein was confirmed by the Senate on April 25th in 2017. Let's see, Trump nominated him to serve as Deputy Attorney General on February 1, 2017.
Right.
Okay, yeah, he
had been U.S. Attorney in Maryland, where any significant case that he could screw up, he
Right.
did. Ramboxy, Laureate, Clinton Bush Haiti.
yeah, all those he screwed up.
You know, it's like, give him some. We need a guy who could definitely screw something up. Let's put him in.
He's definitely deep state. I'm sorry, what was your question, Jason? You were asking?
Well, I just, it seems to be, I didn't mean textbook. It's
textbook.
obviously unusual, but they're running an operation, obviously.
Well, see, first of all, the FBI has a counterintelligence operation itself is kind of unusual. The FBI, decades ago, you advanced by catching bank robbers.
But didn't they do COINTELPRO against Martin Luther King and all kinds of people?
And if you go back to the church hearings and all the rest of these hearings, these were very suspect operations that were being run because they were domestic intelligence gathering operations.
Just like this?
The CIA is not authorized to do domestic intelligence gathering. Okay, so the CIA on foreign intelligence going to get spies is within its charter. But the CIA is not supposed to operate in the United States.
And then that's how they do all this wrangling with
Now
GCHQ.
here you're going to have a case where the CIA and Brennan is working hand in glove with McCabe, Comey, and the others in the FBI.
And Obama.
And Obama to set up a counterintelligence operation that involves the FBI and the CIA and foreign agents. Now that's outside the charter of the Department of Justice.
What about the Five Eyes
Which should not.
Alliance?
Now, okay, now you bring in the fact that it appears that MI6 is involved.
Right.
Because Steele was MI6. You have MI6 involvement with Stephen Halper. And I'd be very surprised if MI6 wasn't exchanging intelligence information, spying on the Trump campaign from Great Britain. Mm-hmm. Okay,
Which,
so...
with electronic surveillance, is quite easily done.
And also the other part of this that needs to be uncovered is that, you know, the NSA has all this information on American citizens. Now, before they actually did the counter-intel operation, before they went to get the FISA court approval, the Department of Justice was looking at 702s. Okay, now what that
was
means...
702 again?
The Department of Justice was requesting the NSA to give them over information on U.S. citizens on the the predicate that they were involved in some kind of an international spying operation. In fact, I believe the FISA court wrote a 99-page report reprimanding the Department of Justice for abusing 702s.
Huh.
This was Obama through the Department of Justice trying to get intel on people working in Trump's campaign.
It's reprehensible. It's not deplorable. This is bold criminal behavior. I mean, I am definitely above the law. I'm never going to be caught. I will never be convicted. I will never be punished. I'm just above all you guys.
And it ties back into what we're talking about as Mueller is a criminal prosecutor. As a prosecutor, I can break the law to convict you.
No, not so much.
Well, they do all the time.
No, I'm just but the thing that's interesting here, Jerry, and this
That's
is
Billy Walters.
right, but
That's this Schaefer case we're talking about. That's all these cases.
right, but here's it actually. I think this is an opportunity for Donald Trump actually, because and an opportunity for this country because I used to, a lot of what Maxine Waters says is just pure crazy stuff, but. She and others have long complained how that justice is a two-tier system of justice, particularly as it relates to minorities.
Right.
And we're now seeing, we in this room now are not minorities, but we're now seeing that this two-tier system of justice has been operating in a very major way against people who are not minorities, corrupting the system, corrupting an essential facet of the American exceptionalism that did until this happened, make this country stand out and be a very attractive source for foreign investment. Gave us proper moral authority to do the kinds of this kind of behavior is well, you wrote the book. It's an abomination.
Abomination. By the way, in my live chat, I'm seeing some, really good discussion. Ford Patron, who has followed me, these doing outstanding comments in here. Robert Justice, they still think they're going to win. Brennan, Clapper, Comey are going out on the news. They believe their hold on the corporate media will allow them to triumph. I don't think that's going to be the case.
Yeah.
Because the American public now, I think, is finished with the corporate media.
That speaks to what we're doing here today.
We're right here today. We're right here today. We've got, I've got 11,000 people watching.
11,000?
1,100. By the time this is going to be archived, there will be 12 or 15,000 people minimum who watch it through today and tomorrow.
Easily.
Okay, and what you've got is the exposing of any criminal at this level. If people those who were alive during Watergate will remember that it was captivating. Every day.
I was one.
Every day.
That's how you learned how to talk.
I was alive.
Every day watching the hearings and how deeply people got involved in it.
Right.
This is going to be the same kind of thing because it has a storybook quality to it, and you're going to want to know who these people were and how they were connected. And there's going to be some themes running through this, which are going to be, it's not only the massive amount of intelligence that's being gathered on the American population. And I've been on this theme with Facebook and the criminality going on in Silicon Valley, how it was set up by the CIA, how the real internet is the Larry Ellisons and the Oracles, the Ciscos, the Sun Microsystem, and these people are, the whole group out there of corruption is astounding. Not to mention any one particular person involved in it, but I've got the Silicon Valley insider reporting about the pedophilia, about the Satanism, about everything going on. Now, that theme is going to carry through into the Clintons. It's going to carry through into Epstein. It's going to carry through into Mueller's cover-up of all this. All that potentially can come out. But what we're saying, what we're basically here covering, is that I don't see any way that this is swept under the rug. Because I think this is going to be, a convincing case all across the board. And by the way, I have a comment here that Thomas Sickler, one of those watching, says, God bless this interview. That all three of us are true patriots.
Thank you.
I want to thank Thomas for that very kind comment. Especially God bless. I think that's really essential to how I view what we're doing. Is that we're here, all of us, all three of us. I've known Charles for a long time, Jason more recently, and all three of us care deeply about the Constitution, fundamental liberties of this country, and want to see them preserved. And I know from having worked with Charles for a long time that we've also fought very hard and worked very hard to make sure that the Clintons and the Obamas and their crimes come to light. And we have an opportunity for that to happen today. And so I'd say we have to ask God's blessing that this is going to be done, even down to the exposure of all the pedophilia, the Satanism, and the other crimes that we find at the heart of the elite.
Absolutely.
This is a topic I'd like to touch on a bit, Doctor, because people have been telling me for a long time that we're headed down a road of a spiritual war, and I didn't fully understand that. But you know, you're speaking about Satanism. I think for people who are maybe coming to our conversations or becoming familiar with the three of us for the first time, or maybe new to alternative news sources, you say Satanism and some people immediately think, oh, that's crazy, it can't possibly be. But there's so much evidence of it. There's so many people. You mentioned Silicon Valley. Quinn Michaels, who I do a lot of work with, has been investigating the Process Church, which Charles has done some investigation into. This is absolutely a Luciferian, satanic, occult group that's involved in the development of artificial intelligence. I mean, they're brazen about it.
What about this whole Nixium scandal?
Right,
that's
it's
come to
cult,
light?
right.
Connected to the Clintons.
Connected to the Clintons. And I mean, again, we're finding that these are reality. And this is part of, I think, what we're dealing with in a you know, the left today, and I point out in Killing the Deep State, is really moved to being what would, in European terms, be considered a European-style communist or socialist party. You know, you've got Tom Perez, who's La Raza. You know, the west of the United States was taken over by the United States, belongs to the mythical Aztlan nation.
I think, isn't that pronounced La Crazy?
La Raza, it's the race.
Yeah.
And
intended to wipe out the gringo, if I'm not mistaken.
and then you've got Keith Ellison, who's number 2, and he's admits now to being a Black Panther, and he was a member of the Nation of Islam. Hillary Clinton, us all deplorables. I mean, if she had won, we'd now be convicted of thought crimes, hate crimes. We didn't agree entirely with the LGBT agenda, or didn't agree with bringing in millions of unvetted refugees from the Middle East, as is happening in the European Union. We'd be criminals.
Well, we would be probably suffering from the aftermath of a North Korean EMP.
Yeah, right. Well, the intolerance of the left, I think, is frightening. And this is not the left of this is not the Democratic Party of Jack Kennedy or Hubert Humphrey, whom I, had opportunity to meet in my life. And these were traditional liberals, and the traditional liberal, coming out of the Hobbes, Locke, and the rest of the traditions of fundamental agreement in the principles of the American Constitution. This leftist party is so off the cliff that they have joined into the One World Order group, and this is the heart of the deep state.
Yeah.
They hate the United States. They think the Constitution should be as outmoded. Like, Ruth Ginsburg, they think we should do Supreme Court decisions based on foreign law. And so what we are fighting is a spiritual battle, and I think the vast majority of the American people still want the United States of America. As Obama said scornfully, the clinging to our guns and Bibles is just okay with most of us.
Right, exactly. On this point, I want to just, forgive me for a second, I'm not taking us off course. I think it's very much on point. You began talking a little bit about Bill Clinton's book tour. And then overnight, we've had Jennifer Flowers appear on Laura Ingraham. 2 nights ago, it was Kathleen Willey and Juanita Broderick. And, I gave Chelsea Clinton a shot about, to reject her parents, come clean, and I would stand up for her. She's chosen not to do that. Last week, she actually went and said that people around Europe should rise up and revolt because Donald Trump doesn't speak for all Americans. When she made that speech, she also called Ivanka Trump out. And on this broadcast, right here, right now, I am calling out Chelsea Clinton. I'm calling out Elizabeth Warren. I'm calling out these various progressives, Nancy Pelosi and others, to ask Chelsea Clinton and ask Hillary Clinton how they could dare say that they are members of the Me Too movement.
Right.
How can you dare say that when we have here this philandering rapist, living in a multi-million-dollar 2 mansions, a penthouse out there in Little Rock that's paid for by the American taxpayer illegally. This guy's going around chasing interns around the swimming pool, according to Ed Klein, on the rooftop of this building that's owned by the National Archives in theory, or at least controlled by the National Archives. And you have this book tour involving Bill Clinton going to these fawning audiences, probably where? The West Village, Beverly Hills,
Kicking
Chicago.
out Laura Loomer.
Kicking out Laura Loomer. I mean, Chelsea Clinton has 3 college degrees in theory, one from Stanford, one from Columbia, and I think one from Oxford. She is no longer a child. She's positioning herself to maybe be a political figure. It's time for the lamestream media to ask the kind of tough questions that excellent reporter at NBC, the African-American gentleman who kicked this off, the way in which Bill Clinton treated that guy was ridiculous. Right. And let's have, if the mainstream media wants to survive, they need to, grow up a real set here, stand up and start asking these Clintons directly, how can Hillary Clinton remain married to a rapist? How could she do that and proclaim herself to be a feminist? And how could this Chelsea Clinton, mouth off at all, right?
Well, and I think all these things, when they happen together like they are, they all have a meaning together. In other words, look, this week, the release of the Strozik page, emails on Monday, not accidental, 500 pages unredacted. 500 pages of the Horowitz report threatened to be rewritten, leaked today on Wednesday. The information that we're getting about Strozik and Page running an international spying operation that was penetrating the heart of the Trump campaign.
It's crazy.
Okay, and and I've got to go. One of my long-term viewers and contributors here. This is Olav Rasmus Voren from Norway, I believe. Says, how do we view the international aspect of this corruption? How will it play out when the U.S. deep state goes down? When God is with us, who can be against us? See, I think, and I've been very pleased to see my live stream have an international audience, because I think this is a great awakening occurring around the world.
Yeah.
That the corruption, the godless corruption of the international one world order crowd that wanted the EU, that forced the EU, that wants the United Nations in charge. I mean, the United Nations in charge in every state that is a mortal criminal of human rights gets put on the Human Rights Commission.
It's natural.
And you get the faceless Brussels bureaucrats who are overturning laws passed in the legislatures of the member states. And it's the same as this deep state, which is a class of bureaucrats, I think tracing back at least to George H.W. Bush, college educated, who are all New World Order, and they stay year after year after year in the bureaucracy. I was very pleased to see Donald Trump reduce 24,000 federal employees in his first 500 days. But there's 1.2 million federal employees.
Wow.
And most of them won't be there forever. So I think, to really root out this deep state, we not only, I'd say fire 95% of them. I'm not sure that's enough. But let's have term limits on the bureaucracy.
Yeah.
You can be in the bureaucracy for 5 years, but after that, you're out. Go get a job.
Well, and you can't go from there to, let's say, Harvard.
And in terms of the world situation, I can attest just from my live stream and watching it. We've had people from Japan, we've had people from Indonesia, people from the UK, all over the world, people from South America, people from Africa watching the broadcasts. And around the world, I think there is a recognition of returning to God and returning to the fundamental values that are expressed in our Constitution, which is human liberty, human rights. We're not sheep of some, massive George Orwell type state that wants to use Facebook and all these other to get us to volunteer. Oh, tell your friends what you're doing. Yeah, well, you're also telling the NSA and you tell the National Security Agency and the CIA, and you're self-recording all the data they need, which they will never lose.
But
These 702 reports that Obama wanted to see, they went in the file and pulled back decades-long records of the people that suddenly Obama was interested in because they were working for the Trump campaign. And oh, by the way, is it now going to be a crime to work for the Trump campaign? Anybody working with the Trump campaign is going to have their life examined for the past 25 or 30 years.
Doctor, isn't it a huge problem, these alliances like the Five Eyes, and now I'm hearing about the 9 Eyes and the 14 Eyes? This effectively eliminates the sovereignty of the United States and our protection if we know that Obama or Comey or Mueller or whoever can just call their counterpart in the United Kingdom or in Canada or in New Zealand, Australia, wherever, and they've got this worldwide network of spying. Certainly the three of us are very susceptible to this. What can we do about this? How can this be stopped? And isn't the growth of these interconnected intelligence agencies, this is the new world order, isn't it, Doctor?
Well, see, I think these are the awarenesses, the they say like the red pilling, the waking up, the people being aware to these agencies that we were, growing up watching the FBI, Ephraim Zimbalist Jr., and the FBI is such a great institution defending us, and to find out that it's a corrupt institution that's politicized and weaponized, that it's going to go after conservatives and libertarians. You're going to be thrown off the internet and unplugged and then hounded for thought crimes by the state, which wants to imprison you because you have a religious objection to baking a cake that says a particular thing you find objectionable for a same-sex marriage. In the Supreme Court decision we had this week,
It's noteworthy.
and the Supreme Court did acknowledge in that case that there is a absolute right to freedom of religion. Now, how this gets reconciled with these other rights that have been attributed by the hard left, but for the average person looking at this, when you've got a form that says state your sex, and you've got 35 options.
Or I'd rather not say.
The average person say this is ridiculous. Because where the left is, you start looking at California and see the state with the most poverty. You see the homeless living in the streets because they can't distinguish everybody's rights are equal, and the drug dealing going on in the Starbucks restrooms.
Yeah.
I mean, this, the average person is saying, Martha, I think there's a little bit out of control here. We better get some order in here. Well, that's, I think, where worldwide the average person is not willing to be ruled by the godless New World Order.
And aren't these intelligence agencies, the CIA, the FBI, they're intended to protect us from enemies in foreign states, not join together with their intelligence agencies to target individuals?
What they're doing is they're collecting such massive data on the population, is that their aim is ultimately to do thought control. And you see in Great Britain, the political correctness, which just it becomes insane. I'm reading Diana West's book again, The American Betrayal, and she cites a case where one of the schools, California or somewhere, decides not to hold a Thanksgiving pageant because it's racist. We had the Indians and then we destroyed the Indians. And Diana West goes back and she said, no, wait a minute. What was this first feast all about? And it was about that, the pilgrims who had come over from Great Britain, where half of them died in either the trip or the first winters where they couldn't grow anything. A couple of Indians who learned to speak English helped them figure out how to plant and survive through these harsh winters. And the pilgrims, once they did get stable, held a feast over several days to thank the Indians. Now, that's part of our heritage. Why can't we celebrate that? It isn't, the slave owners writing the Constitution, who are going to kill the Indians, invite them to this dinner, so we can't have the dinner. I mean, these sexist Marxist interpretations of history, this disinformation that's at the heart of the deep left, that leads to, I mean, how did Strozik and Page think that they ever got the right to do an international espionage activity on the candidate of the Republican Party because they didn't like Donald Trump? Who appointed them to have that authority?
I think you know.
Or to use the massive powers of the United States government and the Department of Justice to commit treason?
Well, and this gets, you know, on both sides of the coin, actually. Trump has had a very difficult time getting security clearances for people he wanted to cross the line, whereas in contrast, Obama got that idiot Ben Rhodes, who failed a security review in the transition between November 2008 and January 20th. He was denied a security clearance. That's in the WikiLeaks stuff.
Right.
Podesta. And he then gets catapulted to a very high position. Apparently, you know, he's right at the right hand of Barack Obama, as with a nominal title of Deputy National Security Director. But he was, you know, in all of the messes, has a horrible reputation, is now actively conspiring with Barack Obama, Michelle Obama, in the Kalorama house and elsewhere, or mansion, I should say. How did that guy get a security? How did John Brennan get to run the CIA? I mean, I'm not an expert on national security matters, but you look at a guy who was raised in a Roman Catholic background, who decides to convert to being...
so weird.
Oh, first he votes as a communist. You know, then he decides to convert to Islam. And you're going to hire Wahhabism, and you're going to hire this man to be your head of the CIA, and nobody stands up and says, wait a minute.
Yeah.
This is a bridge too far.
Yeah, it's so weird.
Right? I mean, I've never...
I want to thank Ken Stahl in my live chat, who's really doing yeoman's work fighting the trolls. And I appreciate it. And I think we should probably wrap it up. I want to kind of wrap it up with one more comment, and that is that as I see the narrative shifting, as I wrote in, you know, Killing the Deep State, this is now we're entering the counterattack. And Donald Trump has managed to, I think, also continue with the remarkable achievements. I mean, the tax cut, which has produced record unemployment, including record African American unemployment, record Hispanic unemployment, has begun negotiations with North Korea. And if we can end North Korea's pursuit of nuclear weapons without a war, it's going to be remarkable.
Are you feeling confident that will happen?
Yes, I think it'll happen.
I do too.
I think it's going to happen. I think Kim Jong has finally realized that, you know, the CIA's plan and John Kerry and Bill Clinton and Jimmy Carter's plan of why don't you develop nuclear weapons so we could have a, you know, New World Order nuclear war and push us all into the one world government. It's probably a bad idea.
It's not going to end well for Kim.
It doesn't end well for the North Koreans.
No.
He's saying maybe we would rather forget about this and, you know, could we have a North Korean baseball team?
Yeah,
and a McDonald's, right?
Right. Build a Trump Tower hotel right there in Pyongyang.
Why do we have to live like this, pursuing, you know, evil, when we could, you know, pursue God like South Korea does and have a, you know, massive rebirth of freedom and economic activity?
Economic activity. It could be a manufacturing powerhouse. All of the mineral resources. I mean, almost every TV in the world is coming out of South Korea.
Right. People in Iran.
Yeah.
In 2009, when the Green Revolution occurred and Obama was giving his speech in Cairo telling all the Muslim Brotherhood how he experienced Islam in so many continents, he refused to support the people in the streets in Iran.
Despicable.
And I think they're getting ready to overthrow, hopefully, this evil regime, of the religious regime that has hijacked Iran. Persian people are a wonderful culture. Millions of them in the United States who are successful and brilliant people. So I think we ought to end by saying that, you know, my view is that Donald Trump is not only successfully, I think, Mueller's at an end, he's done. We've got to play this few days of end game. And I don't think it'll stretch out too terribly long, because when I look at Giuliani and listen to him, I think he's calling up into Mueller and saying, is that subpoena ready yet?
That's right.
Because maybe we'll subpoena ourselves and take it to the Supreme
Right,
Court.
right, exactly.
You know, and so, and I think what we're looking for and why we're going to continue this, what we've been pursuing for a long time and for years, Charles and I, and writing and working together. Charles was my inspiration for writing Partners in Crime.
Not because of my long criminal record.
No, because of your outstanding research and bringing to my attention the scam that was the Clinton Foundation, which I had not realized until
Oh, thank you.
until your excellent research proved it beyond question.
Thank you.
So I think we're now at a point where there is the chance of having a rebirth of freedom. And I think it'll proceed and extend worldwide. And so I kind of want to end this by thanking the people who stayed with us for an hour and a half. We had a large audience. We'll be archiving this so people can see it subsequently. And I want to thank Jason and Charles for traveling and joining me here. It's been a great pleasure to have you both with us.
Well,
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you for having us, Doctor. And definitely for our audience on Crowdsource the Truth, I want everyone to remember that they should be subscribing to Dr. Corsi on YouTube. You can find his channel and an alternate camera angle of this interview on the Jerome Corsi YouTube channel. You can also find Dr. Corsi's payment links there. It is really very important that if you enjoy what we're doing and you're in the audience, you've got to support independent journalism and the types of things that we're doing, that Charles is doing, that Dr. Corsi is doing, that I'm doing. You can follow Dr. Corsi on Twitter at Jerome_Corsi. And of course, you can support Crowdsource the Truth by going to patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth or making a one-time sponsorship payment at paypal.me/crowdsourcethetruth. Dr. Corsi, thanks again for having us. It's always a pleasure to speak to you. And we're approaching the 1-year anniversary. I released our first interview on July 4th, 2017. So we're only a couple weeks away from that. And I want to thank everyone who's been watching. I'll see everyone tomorrow.
And we have a group of doctors from the Boca region who also say hello, have been watching us, and great. We say hello, shout out to them. Appreciative of all the people around the world who have been watching us and staying with us. One more shout out here. I see, I want to say thank you to Ken Stahl again. Not only did he fight the trolls so hard, but he contributed in the super chat, which was very generous. He fought for the trolls and then made a contribution.
So it's a double contribution.
That's the kind of listeners we'd like to have.
Very good.
Thank everybody. Everybody's part of this community. Whether you've contributed or not, you're all equally part of the community that we're trying to create worldwide. Welcome here. We really enjoyed you being with us. And God bless you all. I always like to end these. I always say, in the end, God wins. And so I say, God bless everyone listening. God bless the United States, and God bless Donald Trump.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you.